Railway planned it by transitioning to electrification, electrifying the entire life, then greening the supply chain. I also find here the similar way, port sector also trying to do twofold. One is for the static installations, that is the ports, another one, the moving vessels. With this, let's explore what is going to be the next part.
It's not working.
Yeah, we cannot forget about what is happening to the world when we discuss about any particular thing in any green conference. Let's look at the kind of emission. What is killing us is 53 gigatons of g- CO2 equivalent of greenhouse gas emissions, out of which 37 gigatons are carbon dioxide. And that is happening quite, you know, increasing day by day, year by year. And as a result, the surface temperature has risen to 1.19 degree and the average air temperature has gone to 1.45 degree above the pre-industrial arena. We had objective, and sector wise, it is the energy sector which contributes to the maximum 73%, and the transport sector is around 16.2%, and our subject interest of marine sector is around 2.3% of the carbon emissions. It's a global picture of 2023, the declared data. And what has happened is over various years, we have been keeping a target to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 45% by 2030. That is where we're looking at a pathway called 1.5 degree. And for last 10 years, from 2015 to 25, this curve is not bending down. The emissions are not coming down. When you look at this graph, even the places or the various places of COP26 can get us to 41.9 gigatons instead when we require 26.6 gigatons by 2030. That's where we find that there is an urgent need. This is the maritime emission over last 7-8 years, and though the percentage remains steady, but gradually there is an increase in the greenhouse gas emission as well as carbon dioxide emission. Next, how the you know consumption of the various type of fuels. What we see in the maritime sector is, you can see the green fuels are still a daydream for us. We are getting into some cleaner fuels, but green fuels are yet to come. And if this graph one studies, one can say when will transition to the real green fuel? That's a big question before every one of us, before the entire maritime sector. The emissions, as I put it, not only the carbon emissions, but also the other emissions are also indicating that we are not really in a good phase. Only one thing has happened is HFO has been substituted by VLSFO to maintain the sulfur kind of strategy limits which has been set. Next, the people are finding interest in the LNG vehicles. The ships or the vessels are being converted into LNG. Whether really LNG is the solution for the future, that's a question which comes, but it is still something. It is associated with something called methane escape. There are type of vehicles where the percentage is around 3.5%, and methane has a very high global, what do you call that? Global warming potential, almost around 80 times of that carbon dioxide. Next. Now, when you look at the phases of the ship, where do we really, contribute right now? These are the 4 phases: berthing, anchoring, maneuvering, and cruise. Cruise will anyway have to happen. But in the berthing and in the anchor, we can always see there is a golden opportunity for us to really work as a port to see how we can minimize these two emissions to contribute to less to the global warming. That's where on-time arrival and good facilities to really reducing the berthing time. Next. Now, when you look at the maritime sector navigating the net zero horizon, it's almost 1 billion ton of carbon emission percentage already remains same. Unprecedented projected growth versus call for reduction in the absolute emission. Global seaborne trade has risen from 8 billion tons in 2008 to 13 estimate of 2025 and 17 billion by 2035. At the same time, there is a demand to reduce. 90% of the global trade by maritime sector, 98% of the vehicle use marine grade oils, just 2% are other alternate fuels. However, there are some good news. Ports expanding their green infrastructure with 195 ports offering LNG bunkering, 70 developing the capability, and 28 providing the bunkering at least one or other alternate fuels. 205 ports provide shore-side power, and around 2,500 ships currently being fitted with the shore power connections. That's again big challenge. The fleet size is 55,000 plus, and that's where the challenge. Next, the world fleet is aging. In the next slide, we can see that the environmental targets are hardening, but progress towards the fleet renewal remains slow. There are challenges. Fleet renewal will require investing in new built ships, retrofitting the existing ones, and scrapping the older ones. There is a constraint in all. Fuels of the future remain uncertain. Today, we do not know. In 2005 to 35, what is going to be the new fuel? 2045, what is going to be the ultimate fuel for us? We are today, aspiring with LNG, LPG, ammonia, or hydrogen, but something else may be in the offing. LNG carriers average 27% of the capacity in 2022, and it is finding interest, almost reaching to 51% in 2024. LPG, again, gaining another kind of interest, perhaps because there is a possibility of considering this as a dual fuel, that is LPG and ammonia. However, the average carbon intensity is coming down almost at the rate of 1.3% every year. That's because of various energy efficiency being inducted into the system. Here, the asymmetrical and tired global shipyard capacity and cost pressures have implication of renewing the green ships. That means the shipping sector is not in a good hands of ship manufacturing, ship wrecking, and suppliers who can really retrofit the systems. Next. This is the average age profile of the total fleet. More than 20 years of different segments, the percentages are higher. And those who are below 19 years, they are likely to be there for next several years. So what is the plan for changing them? What will be the net requirement of such ship manufacturing? And these are the challenges. Next. Again, this slide also, of course, speaks about what is the annual addition of the, in deadweight tons in the ships. Next. No, nothing will come without investment. And this is not a small one. It is $1 trillion question. The green revolution comes with a colossal price tag, both for the ship, for the infrastructure, and for all kind of, that is manufacturing of new fuel, producing the new fuel, the infrastructure for bunkering, etc. The various industry analysis estimated somewhere between $1.4 trillion to $3.4 trillion, and where the money is going to come from. And such a sum cannot be by any individual or by any government. One has to see what will be the innovative financing. A new ecosystem of innovative financing of course, is the need of the hour. Next. So, with this, as we look at the kind of challenges, choke points, which are for the maritime sector globally, because today in India, we cannot isolate ourselves from the globe. We are part of the parcel of that. And we need to address this. And I'm sure in the next three sessions, we'll be delving into each details and look for how we can provide the solutions or some attempt to provide the solutions. And with these few words, I close here, giving the session open to the our panelists, our speakers. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for enlightening us and setting the tone of this discussion. We are now going to begin our second session, decarbonization in the maritime sector. And now I would like to invite and introduce the panelists for this session. The very first, I want to invite Shri Subrat Tripathi from the Adani Ports. And so please come to the stage. Then I want to invite Shri Amlan Bora, Chief Representative, South Asia Port of Rotterdam. Mr. Bora is an experienced global supply chain professional, having worked with major multinationals like Siemens, Philips, Diageo, and progressively senior positions. I would now like to invite Shri Sanjay Vermaji. Sanjay Vermaji is the uh, senior consultant with the Inland Waterways Authority of India. He has expertise in ship design, construction, and operation, and he has expertise in modernization and development of infrastructure for shipbuilding and repairs. I would now like to invite Shri Senthil Subramaniam, Chief Executive Officer of Dakshin Bharat Gateway Terminal, who has over 25 years of experience in container terminal, port, and marine survey industry. I would then like to invite Shri K. Hota, Chief Executive Officer at NTPC UP Green Energy Limited. He has graced us with his presence along with Shri Killi Mohan Rao also. Shri, then I request Shri K.M. Rao, who is the Principal Officer Engineering, Joint Director General at the Director General of Shipping in Mumbai. And lastly, I want to invite Shri Arunachalam Karupia, who is here with us today. He is Assistant Vice President at Semcorp Green Infra Private Limited. I think all of you to take time out for this session and just giving a little introduction, and then I would like to invite Shri Amlan Bora to make a presentation about the sector, what they are doing at Rotterdam and other things. So India's maritime sector, we know that it contributes almost 3% to the global GHG emissions and is growing by 6% annually due to rising cargo and fossil fuel use. However, to align with the Paris Agreement and as a responsible leader of not just the global south but the world at large, India is targeting net zero emission by 2070 and a 45% reduction in emissions intensity by 2030, and green shipping is powerful tool of India's climate action strategy. To neutralize carbon emissions and to achieve the net zero, what all needs to be done, that would be the focus of this session today. I'll now invite Shri Amlan Bora to make his presentation, please. Sir? Yes, I will, sir. Definitely. So you may take 5 to 6 minutes for this presentation. I'll do my best. Thank you, sir.
I'll go faster than I super fast train. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. First of all, thank you, Mr. Purohit. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh Soundarajan, Deputy Chairman, for inviting me over here. It's good to see some of the faces, known faces, but from my previous role when I was working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dutch government in India, heading the trade offices. And since very recently, I have taken over as the Chief Representative of Port of Rotterdam for South Asia. What I intend to do is to share a little bit of our story, which probably many of you know better than I actually, because I just started. But please allow me to share a few slides about what we are doing in the subject, and then that probably triggers the discussion. I need this one, otherwise there are too many slides and I can't go as fast as you want. All right. You know Port of Rotterdam, I'm sure, because everybody is from the sector here. It's the biggest port in Europe still. Used to be the biggest in the world. The port itself is 42 kilometers long. It plays a multifunctional role. It's a gateway port. It's a transshipment hub, but it's also an industrial cluster. And I will keep it relevant to the discussion today. The port houses 4 crude oil refineries today, 45 petrochemical companies, vegetable oil refineries, and 3 biofuel plants. In terms of its contribution to the Dutch economy, it's quite phenomenal. Netherlands is a very small country, as you know. The only few things which are big in Netherlands, and Rotterdam, Port of Rotterdam probably is one of those. It contributes 2.9% to the Dutch GDP in terms of whatever we have in the port premises, and also indirect contribution to our GDP. Very important, I'll come that to later, is that the port actually transacts 13% of the total EU energy consumption needs. And that is very relevant for the discussions today. Because of the location and because of very good connections, we can reach, within 24 hours, a population size of 500 million. That's quite substantial. The port is not new, started many centuries ago, but of course the port at that moment was very much within the premises of the city, and it has expanded outside. And that is the nature of very many ports and very many cities, like Mumbai, for example. If you think about Port of Mumbai, if it has to expand, it has to expand in a similar manner. It is a corporation, but it is owned by the government. 70% is owned by the city government of Rotterdam and 30% by the Dutch national government. In terms of the government's model, we split the investment roles with the private stakeholders. We are responsible for building the infrastructure, including the digital infrastructure. And the private companies, of course, they play the role of building the superstructures to run the industrial complexes. And that makes it possible for development of large-scale infrastructures. As you can see, some of the things which are here. In terms of throughput, the port at this moment is about 439 metric tons, 11th largest. But what is interesting to see here is 40% of that total tonnage comes from liquid bulk. And as you can imagine, a big chunk of that, the biggest chunk of that is from oil and gas. Please keep that as a point of reference. And then, like I say, of this total bulk that comes in, 13% of the total EU energy consumption passes through Rotterdam. And then juxtapose that with the reality that we as Netherlands are 10 meters below the sea level. The moment you land in Schiphol, you'll see minus 10 in your altitude meter. If you combine all these things together, it just becomes very natural that we need to do something for energy transition, if not for anything fanciful, but for our survival. And that is what we are doing today. We are very much playing a leading role for the port, but also for Netherlands and EU in terms of defining the energy transition. And how we do that? We have an energy transition strategy divided into 4 pillars. I'm sure this is nothing new or nothing different from anything that you are doing, but this is the way we are structured. And today, this 4-pillared energy strategy is, of course, defining the port today to be the port of tomorrow. The port looks like this today. This is the reserve area, which is not utilized. This area, Maslakte 2, as we call it, is for logistic services today. And then these are the areas for storage, and these are the areas where the industries are housed. But then it is going through a transition. This area is going to be the bio-based and circular industrial area very soon. This is going to be mostly for logistic services and the new electrification needs that will be required to run all the energy transition programs. Storage, Of course, the storage will stay, but repurpose. Today, where we are storing fossil fuel, tomorrow we'll be storing hydrogen, ammonia, and any other more sustainable fuels. Industry, a lot of the industries today will probably have to change. Some will close down, new industry will come up. And even for the industries which will not change, or which will continue, the feedstock and processes will have to be changed. Now, if we take up the 4 pillars, there are many things which are happening today. Many of the speakers before me, Madam Sankar also referenced to the 2050 targets. Many others have also referenced to that. Mr. Vakri also said that. We are targeting to be carbon neutral by 2050, and by 2030, 55% reduction of CO2. These are, in a way, kind of global targets, and we are no exception to that. In all the 4 pillars, we are doing a lot of projects. It will not be possible for me to kind of go through all the projects, but I love to, whenever we get another time or moment to interact. I'll just touch upon a little bit on pillar 2, 3, and 4, because that is highly relevant also from the Indian context. Each of the pillars also provides the possibility for building the collaboration between Netherlands and India. If we go to the second pillar, which is about energy production, and we have been talking about green fuel, hydrogen is one of those key elements in the green fuel, then Rotterdam plays a key role in terms of 2 things. It is going to be Europe's energy production hub, green production hub, but it is also going to be the gateway for receiving green hydrogen, green ammonia, green methanol. That will be exported from other countries, including India. And to be able to be ready for that, we are already investing on our ecosystem within the port premises. As you can see here, there we are talking about storage facilities, we are talking about carbon capture facilities, and we are talking about electrification and all the other infrastructural changes that would be required to support the new industry in the future. Offshore farms are being developed, 7.4 gigawatt to be completed by 2030, and that will be fueling the green hydrogen production and green ammonia production on the premises. Cutting it short. But production, as many of you already have highlighted, is not going to be feasible. It's going to be very expensive. We do not have the capacity to produce that much. So we'll have to look into countries like India. And honestly, Mr. Vakri knows it very well. In the last 3 years, or probably just after COVID, we have this conference called the World Hydrogen Summit. In the first World Hydrogen Summit, now we can be proud of that. But in the first World Hydrogen Summit, India was nowhere in the picture. Nobody spoke about India. Nobody discussed about India. Nobody dreamt about India. Second, already changed. Everybody was starting to think about or raising a question about, okay, is India really going to be that serious? Or is India really that serious? Third World Hydrogen Summit, India had the biggest pavilion amongst all the participating organizations and countries in the World Hydrogen Summit. Fourth World Hydrogen Summit, India was in the inaugural dais. Our Secretary MNRE was speaking there. We had a grand reception. Everybody's looking at India. So this map, of course, doesn't have that many colors, but I think India's name can be written in bold letters, if not already here. And of course, a lot has to happen, but that is the belief, the faith has developed. Well, like I said, to be able to support that, to be on the receiving end, a lot of infrastructure has to be developed. FIDs on many have been called. When you talk about ammonia, we're a little bit ahead, much ahead than the rest. Methanol the same, and for liquid hydrogen and LOHC, we have very concrete plans. Production as well, the Shell 200 megawatt hydrogen plant will be commissioned this year. And just last week or the week before, I think you may have seen the Air Liquide 200 megawatt project taking an FID. The slides had been sent to me by my colleagues last night, and I feel Port of Rotterdam sometimes is more bureaucratic than Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. I could not change anything without, first of all, taking a clearance from the communication team. So I could not put that tick there. But if you look at the second project, Alligator Air Liquide, that project has taken a FID. And we are building the pipeline network, of course, within the premises of the port, but also extending all the way to the Rhine corridor, the Rhine industrial belt of Germany. If somebody asks us today, well, if I bring in all the projected cargo, on green hydrogen, and your pipelines are not ready, how does it work? Actually, that is not a problem. A lot of barging happens on liquid hydrogen already. If we look at our barging capacity and our barging infrastructure, that is sufficient to carry all the liquid hydrogen or hydrogen that can come to the Rotterdam port and take it all the way to Basel in Switzerland. And these are the kind of the off-takers that are possible. A lot of hydrogen projects, as you can see there. Not everything has taken an FID, but you can see a lot of those names. I'll skip this as well. Was skipping this. Second pillar, very quickly, very critical, is about new feedstock and new fuel system. One thing is very critical here, and that word is also there, critical mineral. Why is that critical? Because if you're talking about building the economy of tomorrow, if we talk about transition, be it energy transition or be it talking about building resilient supply chain, then critical raw materials play the most crucial role. I'm taking just an example here, how our energy transition, how our digitalization, air and space and defense is dependent on few of the critical minerals. And I have taken some key technologies and some dependencies on key materials there. But what is the issue here? The issue is the demand for critical raw materials for lithium, graphite, cobalt, nickel is going to grow by many times over. But at this moment, the country which has got a complete monopolistic control on this is China. Not just in terms of mining. In mining as well, they're lucky to have a lot of the things within their premises. But when it comes to refining, China has by far the most control on critical raw material. And we all know that we need to build resilience in our supply chain. So we are looking for alternatives here. And that is where India comes in. And that is where the European regulations are also gearing towards. We do not want to have more than 65% of our sourcing of critical raw material from any country. And this is one area where already India and Netherlands are starting to talk together. India, European Union and India are talking together. And look at also private participation. Port of Rotterdam will be a nodal company, nodal organization driving the strategy for the government of Netherlands. And we'll be seeing a lot on this from us. I'll skip this. Skip this. Mandates. Share the presentation later. I can see you're looking at me. We'll skip this as well. I'll skip this as well. I'll quickly maybe touch on sustainable transport. We'll skip this slide. We all know this. We know this. I'll come to one slide here. Well, these are all regulatory driven. If it has to happen, a lot of the regulations will have to first fall in place. The port readiness for bunkering. We talk about bunkering. Yeah. Quickly end up with this topic and then I'll stop here. So bunkering. Rotterdam, of course, is the world's second biggest bunkering base after Singapore. Singapore is by far bigger, of course, being the first one. And we have been testing with liquid ammonia, and we have done the cold ammonia bunkering of ships recently. That went successfully, and we have been bunkering green methanol since 2023. So these are things that we are already starting to do. And shore power, we are doing that. We have already done it for the cruise terminal, and we are slowly rolling it out for the other cargo as well. This is an interesting one. Net zero ship, Samskip carrying liquid hydrogen. Of course, this is a digital image, not a reality. But there's an interesting thing. This is, I would call it a India-Norwegian-Dutch collaboration. Green hydrogen produced in Norway would be shipped to Netherlands and will be in containers, and then we'll be bunkering the green hydrogen, liquid hydrogen. But the ship itself is made in India. Cochin Shipyard is the one who is making this ship. And there'll be many of those, 3 or 4 of those that will be built. Samskip is a Dutch company. Inland shipping, also things going on. I will not do there. Let's stop here. Building the future together. That was the essence of what many of the speakers have also highlighted. Not just people to people, country to country, but everybody needs to work together here. And with that, I would like to thank you for the time and for listening to me. There's the last slide, which is not there. That's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bora. As we have already started talking about what the private sector or the other countries are doing, I want to take a question to you first, Rikbhai, very quickly. That, you spoke about preparing as a gateway to energy requirements for Europe. Now, on the counterpart, how do you see what is happening here in India or in other Latin American countries? How they are also cooperating, because Europe getting carbon neutral is fine. What is that happening with India or other countries who are producing the green hydrogen or any other new fuel for any other country? How do you see that here? Yeah, we have market.
All right. I will.
Yeah.
Am I audible? Okay. Uh, Let me just answer it in the context of India and Netherlands, or European Union and India. Um, First of all, when you talk about green fuel, there's a chicken and egg story, which India is slowly starting to solve. The chicken and the egg story is, on one side, the buyers or the off-takers are looking for a price point which they're willing to pay. And on the other side, the producers are looking for a commitment for a period which from the off-takers, which the off-takers are not willing to give. I think the promising development in that is India's recent auction on green ammonia at a price point which has really taken everybody by surprise, right? If we slowly move in that direction, taking the cost down is fundamental because we are talking about energy costs. That's just the beginning of the story. A lot of things will have to roll on after that. If the cost can be contained, of course, the interest and the market will develop in reality. And there we are, of course, working together in bringing the people together, in developing technologies together, collaborating institution to institution, knowledge institution to institution, and solving the problems together. And the next bit is about the midstream assets. In the slides what I was showing today, I was talking mostly about the midstream assets. Midstream assets are as much critical a component as is a producer and as is an off-taker. In that area, again, there's no need for anybody to reinvent the wheel. In certain areas, India is a bit ahead of the rest. In certain areas, I'm sure Netherlands is a bit ahead of anybody or other stakeholders. We need to join our hands together, and it's happening. We are talking to the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways. We have an MOU with MNRE, between Netherlands and MNRE. Terry was actually our partner, knowledge partner in developing the first knowledge draft based on which the MOU kind of got its shape. So these kind of collaborations are happening, and we'll keep on developing the collaborations and make this global reality a success.
Thank you. Subratji, what Mr. Bora has just said, that the collaborations, and particularly like it's a collaboration between private sector, governments, and between two countries. As somebody who is a big player in the port sector, how do you see that, the kind of cooperation we have and how it is contributing towards this particular aspect?
Well, thank you, and a warm good afternoon, and many kind of greetings on behalf of APSEZ to all the participants. The beautiful inaugural ceremony set the tone to Mr. Das, to the chairperson Vijay Kumarji. As a port operator, the first word that I wish to use is to be a responsible port operator. Now, the word responsibility encompasses with itself a transition which we are seeing very actively from a certain kind of a energy to a new wave of energy that will come to the world. Let's not forget, and while there's a creeping sense across India that we are being called upon, and I'm glad to hear from Amlanji, as I'm glad to connect with him again, that in the World Hydrogen Conference, we've taken a space and an optics. At the same time, the responsibility that hovers on India at large and the maritime sector, therefore, is to see that we handle this transition and meet the goals that we have promised. What in fact, on the maritime sector as a responsible port operator that APSEZ is, and doing close to about 430 million metric tons of cargo of the 1,600 that has been done in India, which corresponds to over 27%, is that we would go through all that was spoken in the first half about, let's say, electrification. today you will be happy to note that we took this pledge in 2022 that by 25 we would become carbon neutral. While we may have just missed it, but we are very close to that. We pledged ourselves that by 2040 we will take net zero, which is extremely challenging. And to do that, it's a combination of things. It doesn't stand in splendid isolation, as it were. So all the ports of APSs at first are going to be entirely RE powered. To do that, not only within the ports, and I congratulate Chairman VOC Sushantji and Deputy Chairman Rajeshji for taking this great initiative. I also want to tell you that the port sector of India comprises, after the beautiful example of PPP, nearly 45% is done in the non-major ports. It's time that the ministry recognizes the revolution that is happening in the non-major ports. Mundra, for example, is India's port, which has been the pride of place for doing 100 million first, 150. And when I sing Rotterdam today, Mundra did last year more than 200. But more than the 200, with all humility I say, and which we handle, is that nearly every third container of India passes through Mundra port, again in all humility. But how do we handle them? The entire set of cranes are electrically fed. The entire set of GSUs, entire cranes and ITVs, the ITV story is still happening. All ITVs, at the moment, we've got close to about 400 ITVs. And the more important fact is when we pledged ourselves, we were the first to undertake this transition. While a lot has been spoken, very silently, APSZ has been undertaking this transition, as I come back to the word, a responsible port operator. So that responsibility encompasses that you have a chart for yourself. You're aware of the energy transition that is taking place. You're aware that your country's energy needs are still largely thermal oriented. You're also aware that in the ports, the transition that will happen more than 200 megawatts we consume is entirely green fed from a combination that we do in Khavda. Whereas I was telling the other speakers during the break that while we'll be doing from hybrid power close to 30 gigawatts by 2030, we're already close to about little more than 5.5 gigawatts at the end of this financial year. Now, all that is being routed to our ports across the country through power of streaming the power, and it'll be green based. The other thing about net zero is the indices. Now, it's time in the corporatization of the Indian port sector. You'll find that today most ports are becoming landlord models. You look at JNPT, it's an entirely landlord port. Paradeep is en route to become, and I'm sure VOC and others, you already have a landlord model in the state government concessions. You'll have Mundra, you'll have Dhamra, you'll have Kattupalli here in Tamil Nadu, you'll have Karikal here in Tamil Nadu. All this, the transition that we are undertaking towards net zero is a responsible transition. And when I say this, how do we get indiced? Because the funding that we are going to take, and here the difference between a major and a non-major port, while the government is a sovereign fund, the non-major ports have to go to the market to take funds. Today, while green financing is a subject after this, I shudder to think that we can go to raise bonds and monies in India if you are not valued by indices such as CDP, Sustainalytics and all. And it's with all humility and privilege, I would say, amongst the peers that are benchmarked and the 10 best port operators in the world, India ranks with APSZ in all humility, as I said, among the 10. And our journey perhaps going to be the fastest. I congratulate each of the major ports. There is, while the green hydrogen is taking place, in one of our ports, in all the ports we have begun, in Gopalpur port, which is very newly acquired, we've got this offtake agreement. We're not just setting up green hydrogen players coming in through PPP models, but offtake agreements being signed by countries which would not be able to produce green hydrogen at their spaces at lesser costs. Eventually cost and technology going to be the kings of the world as we go ahead. I'm not even talking about digitalization has been spoken, but cost and technology, when this transition happens, countries like Korea, countries like Japan, they were more actively pursuing our transition of hydrogen that we produce in India, and we transport them, as fuel in the maritime sector, also to give them their security when they do their part of the transition. All this is weaved into the strategy which Honorable Prime Minister said by 2070. We in APSZ believe our transition will happen by 2040, and we've taken all the corrective steps. So, valuing yourself, and I will encourage as we go forward to all the major ports, it's time you started valuing yourself on benchmark statistics. Introduce Sustainalytics, introduce CDP, introduce those who evaluate as to how I'm conducting my businesses. Am I within the contours of the green transition that is taking place? Well, that's very important. So I come back to what I began. that as a responsible port operator, ESG is going to drive the force. The driving force of ports will be governed by ESG. I think there were references by Madam Malini. She wouldn't recollect. I'm pleasure to seeing her up for quite a hiatus time. But I will tell you, the ESG is what is going to determine and govern the course of the ports in the future. Are the ports of India, major ports and non-major ports, prepared to recognize this transition? If you are, then you will chart out your territories. Okay. What is ESG? I would love to tell, but many people would not be knowing and accepting that this is the word. Today, with the IMECC, which has not been spoken of, India's desire to get into the IMECC's corridor, we'll have a larger share in the world supply chain. When we do a largest part in the world supply chain, we're looking at transporting Indian goods, notwithstanding what is happening about certain countries imposing 25% tariff on us. It's not for me to comment, and penalties that come. The fact is, when India weaves itself into a larger supply chain of the world and will become a China plus one strategy, and we're going to be a manufacturing powerhouse, which is a desire, because that is so well linked to India's goal for poverty elevation, etc., and for general welfare of Indian citizens. So one of the goals is to route Indian products through the IMECC route. So for the Western India, I mean, the East would also play a part. The Western India, and especially ports like Vadhavan, which is coming up, JNPT, Mundra, Kandla, are well positioned to get into this economic corridor, which is go to the Far East, ports like Haifa, which were weaved into that, and we run a terminal in Haifa, again getting across to Europe. While we haven't got across to Rotterdam so far, because most of the Indian products will get into US and Western Europe, and they do route themselves. That is the necessity to be aware. So IMECC and our preparedness for that is also another fact that in the green transition that we should be taking up. So these are some of the competitive thoughts. If we do come back, I will share further thoughts on that. But the fact remains, as I said, a responsible port operator recognizes the responsibility of operating itself within the contours of being green, sustainable, and ESG earmarked. That's the way of the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I pick up the word ESG, as you've said, and that is, I would say, a keyword for this session larger. I come to you, Sanjay Vermaji, because you are somebody who is an expertise in modernization and development of all the infrastructure for shipbuilding and repairs. So I welcome you. Yeah, please, you can be there and speak about it. So that will be better because what he has just told, Mr. Subrat has just told how our port should modernize or look for, the new ports which are coming up. How do we go to the way of ESG and we keep that word inside it?
So, well, I will set the cue for him.
Yeah.
The net transport product the country, while we are debating, is so much in favor of a mode of transportation which is non-environment friendly. Recognize that first. India's net transportation product is heavily in favor of road transportation. I'm not speaking against road transportation. We have Chairman AWI, we had a wonderful session on NW5. It's time we took the leap of faith and did things correctly. So first, get India's cargo into maritime cargos. Maritime cargo doesn't necessarily mean EXIM cargos. What about coastal Atmanirbharta that we are talking of? What about inland water? That these are some of the very concurrent themes. Even the practicing best economies in the world, even US, and when we look at the logistics index, which is very important for us in the greening thing, see, nobody's going to buy your product eventually if you're not green. If you're not producing green steel and green steel going into making green products in India, your products will not be bought in the future. So when you do that, the transition to get cargoes into the maritime fold in India first. Our share is very little, very, very, very little of the India's net transport product. I set the queue for you, IWI, please.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
See, what we have done for modal shift from road to waterways, one is the Jalwahak scheme which has been introduced. And going further, we are having discussion with Bureau of Energy Efficiency for carbon credits for when the transition takes place from the road to the waterways. So these carbon credits, there is an Indian carbon market which is going to be established very soon. The complete process is in the hand. And we are in discussion with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency to recognize the shift from road to waterways for the carbon credits for the operators. That will earn them the credits which they can earn the revenue of course, Jalbagh scheme is for encouraging them to do more cargo movement through the coastal, to the waterways. Plus, in IWT sector, whatever all the new terminals which are coming, all the multimodal terminals which IWI is building, they are all green terminals. And we are going in full swing for the renewable energy. And by next year, we'll achieve the target. All the IWI buildings, all the IWI terminals will be having renewable energy. So, with all the support, and we are trying to give support with respect to the reception facilities for the vessels for discharging their garbage, their sewage, their dirty oil. Those infrastructure is also being created. And to a large extent, we have already achieved that. We have, in 17 of our terminals, we have got the onshore power supply established. So with these type of support which IWI sector is giving, I think so the operators should be happy to, shift to waterways, and then they can achieve their target for the green part of it.
Thank you, sir. I think definitely Indian waterways, where we are also with the Harit Nauka and all those kind of initiative, we are moving towards moving our cargo to Indian waterways and focusing less on road. But I want to come to you, Mr. Rao, that how is the DG Shipping, who is controlling more of all of it? How are they prepared for it?
Sir, good afternoon to all. DG Shipping is a policy maker, and they make the pathway for the ship owners or ship managers to convert their ships towards the green. So for that, we have made a policy, and that is with the ministry for approval, and that will be in due course, it will be done.
So definitely, because we spoke about the kind of policies, and Mr. Subrat also said, and sir is also saying that those kind of things are coming up, and how we can bring it into, not just the whole shipping sector, how you can enforce it further to get into ESG on those part particularly.
So
what particular measures
we cannot impose directly, because we have to be bound with the international regulations, international conventions. So already Indian ships are complying with those conventions, and 5,000 GT vessels and above has to comply with the requirement, and directorate is imposing those guidelines, and they are complying with required. But our goal is to have by 2050 that our ships has to meet the net zero. For that, we put a roadway to entire shipping industry. That is in the discussion. It will be done. And for that, the Directorate General of Shipping is having a separate division for this, and then we are creating that under DGMA, Directorate General of Maritime Administration, under which that we are creating a separate division for it, and definitely will achieve it.
We just want to come back to from shipping to ports once again, and more around energy. When we are saying, Mr. Hutta, I want to come back to you. Like, you are a green energy producer who conventionally was not a green energy. What more, particularly towards the shipping sector, what kind of things NTPC is kind of looking at?
Thank you so much. So first of all, let me congratulate BOCPT for organizing this kind of conference, and the shipping sector is taking forward the green initiative of the country. And as far as NTPC is concerned, it started as a thermal power generator, but since 2004 we have been NTPC Limited. So getting across the entire energy value chain, we are now an integrated energy company. And not only, and our green roadmap has started from the hydel generation long back. And with the acquisition of TSDC also, that has taken forward, and NIPCO. And as far as renewable is concerned, we are a listed company through our NTPC Green Energy, which has a target of one of the biggest target of 60 gigawatts by 2030. And we are on its way to achieve it. And today we are around 8,000 megawatts. And so we have created a lot of ecosystem within ourselves with the cooperation of various stakeholders to have the land bank and the other heritages to achieve that number. That is number one. And second is as far as greening is concerned, NTPC is already a nuclear power with 2 nuclear companies, and one of the first nuclear project is already underway in Rajasthan. It's a big nuclear project, and at the same time, we have identified more locations for the nuclear projects to get ourselves green. Thirdly, and we are not looking ourselves as a power producer anymore. We are an energy producer and now helping the entire sector to green. So NTPC has been contributing, say, 25% of the market share to enlighten the bulbs of every house or industry. Today will be the supplier of the basic raw material, basic fuel for each and every industry, whether it's a mobility sector or it's a blending into the natural gas pipelines or creating a big hub, creating green molecules. You'll be converting the green electrons into the green molecules and basically meeting the requirement of the various industries in India as well as export. In that direction, in the recently Honorable Prime Minister inaugurated one of the biggest hub of India, which NTPC is putting up at Pudimadaka in Andhra Pradesh, which is very near to Vizag. And this is a very, very, very unique hub of one of its kind, wherein NTPCs, both the investors as well as developing the entire ecosystem as a park, as a kind of SEZ. And we'll be having our own jetty, and with a green jetty, and having the storage system, having a desalination plant, and the entire, it is a 1600-acre facility wherein NTPC is developing, and it is in the first track of the developments. And that will be producing around 2.5 MMT of green molecules, and that will be just getting converted out of 20 gigawatts of solar power in Andhra Pradesh. In association with the government of Andhra Pradesh, we have formulated a company wherein that 20 gigawatts of green power would be powering 7 gigawatts of RTC power to the hub. So that's the target. So apart from the hub, NTPC is also supporting various industries in participating in the recent tenders of the refineries or the second tender of the green ammonia aggregation and all the wherein we get the opportunity, we try to participate in that. So as far as greening the ports are concerned, we have joined hand with 2 of our major ports which have been identified as the green ports, both Kandla as well as BOCP. And we are very, very thankful to Mr. Purohit and the Deputy Chairperson as well as Mr. Voi. We have already inked an MOU with VOCP to take up the green mobility through hydrogen vehicles, and we have signed the MOU. And our MOU with Kandla has taken a step forward, and already the tenders are in advances, and it will be implemented very soon. So this is our third mobility project. The first mobility project started at Leh, wherein NTPC is the first company which established the performance of the FCEVs supplied from, say, Ashok Leyland. And we could establish the performance of the FCV at an elevation of 3,500 meters and at such low oxygen levels, and getting the performance of the buses much better than the design. And I'm happy to say that we have handed over all the 5 buses, and the Ladakh administration is already plying it in 4 circuits and basically serving the common persons. And very soon we would be starting the operations in Odisha with the support of the government of Odisha. Will be operating those in next 6 months. And the second project I missed, this month itself, we are commissioning the mobility project in Delhi. That's in Greater Noida. So it will be operating in Delhi and Agra circuit very soon. So you may be seeing it in the next month. It will be commissioned and it will be filling the hydrogen. And as far as NTPC is concerned, we have been right from the day one, we have focused on the green hydrogen. So obviously, green hydrogen mobility projects are challenging because all over the country, in say China or say Korea or Japan, they have gone ahead with the gray hydrogen mobility now towards the green hydrogen. But we have gone ahead with the green hydrogen. It has to have the support of the big company and the government. So that's why it is even feasible. And apart from that, I'd just like to mention one of the very, very noble initiative wherein we are supporting the Indian Army in the very, very remote locations of Ladakh, we are creating a very self-contained microgrid. And recently, you might have heard about the newspaper Adani also, they commissioned a microgrid, and we are also doing a microgrid for the Indian Army in Chushul, Ladakh. So that is a well self-contained microgrid system with independent renewable generation and fuel cell, renewable generation, hydrogen generation, and the power generation all together. And we are also one of the first companies to decarbonize, trying to have a make and trying to establish the 8% successful blending in the gas transportation sector. So in association with Gujarat Gas Limited, now PNGRB is very, very considerate enough to chart out the roadmap. Even today, in fact, they are discussing with all the transporters and NTPC to chart out the roadmap, what they have got the recommendations from the ICF and all. So that's an area. So that's true. So in nutshell, what we can say, NTPC is trying to help out all the sectors to decarbonize. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. So, like NTPC, we have Semcorp here, who is like, at the private, as a private sector company is doing the similar things. I just want, sir, to briefly let us know what exactly, like, how are you and your company would be helping, or how would it help the setting up the net zero?
Yeah, can I use a presentation or?
No, let's just like this. So we want to finish it quickly.
Okay, so Vanakkam Thuthukudi and good afternoon, the dignitaries. I am Arnachalam and I represent Semcorp. Basically, Semcorp is from Singapore. They have been operating. They started with the power plants, and then they have developed into the LNG, like mostly on the bunkering and the shipping activities. And in India, we wanted to enter as a power generating company, so we set up a thermal power plant in Nellore, and after that, we divested that. And at that same point of time, we wanted to contribute to the green grid of India. So today we are close to around 6 gigawatt of plants operating in India. And with that background, and also with the operations in Singapore, we thought of going into the green hydrogen and the green ammonia. So basically, the green ammonia we are targeting to some of the nations in the east and in the west. And we have looked at the various options, and the location Thuthukudi has helped us to reach both the east and the west, and that's why we came over here. And in that aspect, we are planning to have 200 KTPA plant as the first phase, and this is will help us to reach to the Far East. And we are already in collaborations with some of the shipping companies and also with our headquarters in Singapore to use the waterways from Thuthukudi to reach to the Far East, and this will help us to feed their basically the needs of green ammonia in the sectors like power plants in some of the countries, and also the mobility requirements in the Far East. So again, on to the second aspect is we are also an operator of the power plants in Singapore. We have the plans to use the hydrogen to be in the gas turbines for producing the power. So that's the reason we are looking at the proximity from Singapore, being Thuthukudi is closer. So we can take off the ammonia from here and then use it there for powering our gas turbines in Singapore. So this is the plan we have ended up, and we are planning that also the ships which we are going to use should also be in the green nature. So we are looking at the options of using ammonia propelled ships or ammonia used fuel ships, so that we will be in a full value chain to be in the green nature.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Senthil, as a terminal operator, here particularly in VOC, which is experimenting a lot in terms of green energy and a lot of new things are coming, how do you see this amalgamation of policy, of design, of new technology helping you?
Good afternoon, first of all. I'd like to extend our sincere thanks to VOCPA chairman for organizing such a big event in the title of Green Ports and Shipping. So basically, see, in Tuticorin, which is primarily one of the major port and a small town, and so far we have been focusing only on the commercial aspects in the ports. And the green sounds slightly strange, even though it is now getting very much focused. So now we are get into sort of a tune of what's happening globally, and then pan India, and finally into Tuticorin. So let me, before answering your this thing, let me give a small scenario of what's happening in India in a container terminal sector, since I represent a container terminal. So there are 32 terminals in India today, out of which 20 is under major port and 12 terminals are under minor ports, out of which 20 major port terminals or terminals operating under major port are contributing 55%, whereas remaining 12 terminals are contributing 45%, predominantly by Adani ports. So they are the leaders today. So that's a broad scale. And then if you look at the kind of electric driven and the green energy, the minor ports are they are far away when compared to the terminals which are operating under the major ports. That a real maybe a hard bitten truth. That is, we'll have to agree. So as I said, if you look into the numbers under the major ports today, forget about key cranes which are already electrical driven. Whereas if you take the numbers of RTGs, the rapid air gantries, now the terminal deployed today under the major ports, still almost 40 to 50% not being electrified. They are still working using the diesel power supply. So that means again, there's a long roadmap is there for the major port to reach to the level of the Maritime India vision of 2030, which says that even the shore power has to be done. And if you, again, the Maritime India vision very clearly says by 2025, Indian flag vessels to be adopted to of shore power supply. But I can count the numbers of Indian flag vessels today, which is something around 15 to 20 max container vessels, Indian flag. I think nothing has been moved so far. That's again a fact, number one. And then when you talk about 2030, I can showcase again being local here. If I look at the perspective of how we are working towards moving towards the green energy. Now, Tuticorin, now we have only 2 terminals, and both are something around 1. Ours is 10 years old, whereas JM Baxi is recently opened. They are 3 years old. So they are already 90% electrified equipments. So that way there is not much worry of talking about reducing the carbon emission. But then remaining 10% is again a Herculean task. So the port has to take a 3-angle sort of a view. First, they should start with port as a whole, how to develop a ecosystem of engaging one power supplier, green source supplier, number 1. And number 2, the kind of whether the really port has sufficient land area available, and then how many berths have been handed over to a PPP operator, and how much financially he can take it up. Because again, the problem with the key crane, the terminal operators here, since we are under major port trust, and we have been already governed by a concession agreement, which never talk about all these things. So there is another mechanism has to be coming in to correct all those things, and then financially whether it is viable, because port has to invest, and then the developer, the developer has to, the service provider has to move it forward, come and have a discussion with us. This is point number 1 with the discussion with the terminal operator. And then when you talk about discussion with the seaside and the vessel operators, now the kind of vessels today what we are operating Tuticorin, bluntly I would say 30 container vessels in a year, even though numbers I would say 500 vessels has been calling, vessel call has been made, container vessels, but fixed all fixed vessels. But then they are all beyond 15 years old. As somebody put a presentation, 49% of world fleets are almost beyond 15 years old. Now, if you go and talk to that, so you need a proper mechanism to approach those kind of customers. Hey, what is your opinion? Now you are shunting between very, it's a short haul this day. And then this is another challenge. And then when you look at the land side, now every day there are 700 to 800 trucks we have been handling.
Now, how about that kind of group? And what is the port's plan as well as the government? How they are planning to convert those kind of ITVs into they are all 100% diesel driven. So what is the idea? Now they are talking about by 2030 will become complete carbon certification ports. So there are a lot of effort has to be done. And then for that, I would say the blueprint has to be made first, involve all the stakeholders, then finalize one service provider first, and then let the port support. Then things can move on. It's a Herculean task, but then somebody will always say, no, China is like tiger, whereas India is like elephant. So we may raise up slow, but then when we start moving, nobody can dare us. So that way, we are very confident.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sanjay ji, I want to come to you last for this thing. But the questions which have come from Senthil and from others also about the challenges in policy and in initiative, you, somebody who has looked at the modernization of the infrastructure, how do you see quickly what could be done faster as a policy measure and also in some more of steps in a way?
See, as far as I'll speak for the
Please.
inland water sector, we have the Inland Water Vessels Act, which is in place 2021, in which we have the earlier Act of 1917 had state-specific registration and all. So the ease of doing business was not there. Now we have eliminated that. You can register your vessel anywhere and operate anywhere in the country. That is the first part of it. Likewise, we have developed the rules, framed the rules, which has been notified. Now we are coming up with special category rules for fuels for autonomous vehicle, which is under ministry for their deliberation, and it will come get notified very soon. So with those things coming to place, and then we are also focusing on the capacity building. Now, from IWT sector, we are setting about 9 regional center of excellence. NINI is the IWA's own institute. We are setting the second regional center of excellence in Assam. And then likewise, we have got in other parts of the country, which will be setting over a period of time. The second part is aging of fleet, which has been mentioned by everyone. What we have done, we have made a 10-year plan for replacement of all the vessels which aged vessel over a period of time, keeping, because it is a capital intensive project, so we have to keep the requirement of the funding part of it. As far as the green vessels are concerned, we have ordered 8 electric catamarans on Cochin. 2 have been delivered. 6 vessels will be delivered by end of the year. And then whatever ecosystem is required to be developed for operation of these vessels, that has already been done. Then we have the pilot vessel of hydrogen fuel cell. Now we have got the commercial certificate from IRS. So very soon we'll be operating the hydrogen vessel in Varanasi. For that, we are in discussion with oil companies and all for a long-term production and supply of hydrogen for our vessel. Likewise, we are looking forward for a new hydrogen vessel which is being proposed to be built. New catamarans is required to be built. And anyway, whatever is required on the infrastructure side, most of the thing I have already mentioned that we have on the process of achieving the target, or we have already achieved the target. So, and then the most important thing is, like I mentioned about carbon credit. Now we need to educate and interact with the stakeholders with respect to the carbon credit so that they know the value of that, and then they can generate the revenue through the carbon credits by reducing the emission part of it, be it from the air part or the water part or thing. So from that angle, if you see, the policies are already there. Now the green shipping policy has been drafted by DG Shipping, which is under discussion. And the comments on that have been forwarded to Terry to compile the requirement. So that should also come into place where a clear directive would emerge with respect to what is required to be done with respect to green shipping. And lastly, for IWT sector, we have prepared a scope of work which we have given to Terry. Now we are under discussion with them so that we actually know for sustaining the green initiatives in reality on ground, what is required to be done, which is measurable, quantifiable, and which can be, at the end of the day, boost the economy of the country.
Thank you
That's
so much, sir. You want to say something, sir?
Sir, some of the speakers have said that the ship's aging is day by day is going up, but ships are designed for to run for 25 years, and many ship owners are eagerly looking for the what technology will be stabilized in the world. Unless until that one is stabilized, they are not going to order for a new ships. And ultimately, it is my personal opinion, we are heading towards the nuclear power at the end of the day. Though the SOLAS is permitting, safety of life at sea, permitting for nuclear ships, but we are not running, only the defense sector only we are using. But ultimately, we are going to come nuclear power as an alternative power instead of green hydrogen, ammonia, whatever it is. Ultimately, we are going to reach to the nuclear power. This is what my opinion is.
Thank you, sir. Subraji, I request you to give your concluding remarks for this session, please.
Thank you. It's been a very engaging session. And besides the very wonderful inputs that have come, I would like to thank my co-panelists, as I would like to thank a very animated audience over here. Senthilji, many thanks, I was wondering, he's shown us the mirror. A reality check, really, So while we can tap ourselves on the back, pat each of us on the back, we're doing great work on green hydrogen, the reality check is this, that there is an ecosystem which does not foster a greening of the maritime sector. What does the ecosystem say? It doesn't limit itself to just a particular operation. It stretches itself into visible and invisible chains, which could get into financing, which could get into supplier management. So when I say that I'm a responsible port operator, my responsibility goes across a few things. I didn't prepare a slide because you did surprise me with this occasion. I was not supposed to speak here. Net zero emissions, renewable energy, a circular economy which is dependent on zero waste to landfill. Are we even talking of this in the ports? Then a waste management, which 5R principles spoken of often but not practiced. A 32, and then we've gone through why are we under a challenge? We are under a microscope because we cannot get finances. We cannot go not just to the SEBIs of the world, not to the Nifties, but not to raise finance, then you would not be getting anything. Water management in the ports, because again, while ports are all saline fed, so the question of getting sweet water management is something very important. And I would like to say that we achieved a 67% biodiversity. We've taken this goal with ourselves that will be net zero deforestation by 2050, because we act within mangroves and a very peculiar ecosystem which influences coastal communities. So one of the pillars of Sagarmala is also see that besides all this is your coastal communities, eventually it's the welfare of them. And when I'm looking at the suppliers, you would know that when we do a ESG indexing, our suppliers are encouraged to see how much of greening that they have done. So today, when we said we are 67% compliant with ESG standards, the finances of the world are saying 67 does not pass you through. We won't come to your port unless you are 100% compliant. So I'm very glad, Senthilji, you actually showed the mirror. So the ecosystem that comes in is how do we bring in that ecosystem? And as I said, we don't stand in splendid isolation. We stand with trajectories of cooperation, togetherness, and I think this is a joint responsibility. Let us be aware, let us recognize it, let us take it together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I would now like to request, I'm just waiting. We have got the message from, is it there? I'm just waiting. We have got a message from MOS, Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, Mr. Shantanu Thakur, which has just arrived, and we are just trying to play it if possible. Yeah, yes.
Namaskar. It gives me pleasure to know that the VOC Port Tuticorin is organized the Green Port and Shipping Conference on 1st August 2025. It is very important that we should make our efforts to the vision of Pancham route given by our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji to keep the earth and environment safe. The Ministry of Port Shipping and Waterways is going to celebrate the India Maritime Week 2025 in October 2025, and in the preparation for this week, everyone at the ministry is making their effort to make it is a success. I congratulate the NAVIC cell and VOC port for making contribution towards the goal for achieving net zero and organizing this conference. I thank you all for taking this out for this conference. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Namaskar.
I must thank everyone, and as you have put the kind of, we have to operate in an ecosystem, and we know like the challenges. And I also want to thank the chairman, VOC Port, Mr. Sushant Purohit, that he has taken up this challenge to put it all of it together, and it is as difficult as the ecosystem is. Thank you so much, sir.